Hi guys, my name is Sasha Vinogradova, and you might remember me from NAB presentation 2020, where I was showing you how to do this photo projection on a custom geometry with adding some 3D elements. A couple of words about myself. I'm a digital artist, art director. I've been in this industry for more than 15 years. I do digital art, illustration, motion, book covers. Used to work in companies like Mill and Apple. Some of my latest projects is this insect art, and also currently I'm working in a company called Parallel NFT, which is pretty much a card game, and my job as an artist there is to create bespoke art for the cards. So here's an example of some of the work I do for them. As you can see, it's sci-fi themed game, and it's full of very interesting lore, and has 5 different races, parallels, and each of them has their own art and own set of cards. So as you can see, because I do lots of character design in my work, I wanted to share with you my workflow, some shortcuts and some discoveries I pretty much found while figuring out the best approach. So in today's presentation, I'm pretty much going to go through a breakdown of this little project. We're going to talk about how to create bespoke character starting with DAZ, how to make DAZ character look more unique, how to create DAZ morphs to modify your standard DAZ figure. We're going to talk about how to set an animation so you can simulate your fabric in Marvelous Designer. I'm not going to talk about creating clothing in Marvelous Designer because I just unfortunately do not have time for everything, but I would love to do that too. And then we will dive into Cinema and Redshift, and I'm going to go through setting up the project, lighting, materials, camera, everything. So let's get started. Okay, I have DAZ open, and let's start with creating our base character. You can go into content library. I don't know why they kind of duplicate each other. It's sometimes very confusing, but it just pretty much needs to find content library, my DAZ3D library, people, Genesis 8 female, and create Genesis 8.1 basic female. Okay, our basic character is here. So the next step would be creating unique looking character with more bespoke features, and it's actually very easy to do. We just need to create what's called DAZ morph. Let's look into how to create it. Open your character, remove eyelashes and tear, then click on the character and parameters. In parameters, drop your subdivision level to 0. Make sure you didn't touch anything, that pose is default. And from there you can just click File Export, and export it as Genesis female 8 base. And in here, let's import our new Genesis figure. Cool. I'm not going to dive too much into ZBrush explanation. I hope you guys had a chance to play with it. ZBrush is great. But don't forget to click Edit, and don't forget to click X, so whatever you do with your figure, it's symmetrical. And let's start sculpting. I usually like bringing a little reference. Like, I'm going to use one of those references, and I'm not going to copy it completely, just sort of to have some inspiration. Sometimes it helps me to bring it on the back of my screen. So, for example, I can do this and then do see-through and align my face with my reference. And from here, as you can see, I'm aligning it not as face, but as the proportions of the head. I'm going to use move brush. By the way, this was shortcut B. I'm going to change the size of my brush. I'm using brackets hotkey on my keyboard, or you can also change it in here when you hit spacebar and then adjust in your draw size. Okay, so let's. Oh, no, that's the wrong brush. Let's adjust her face. Okay, so I think I'm happy with the results. I always prefer to save my working files, and I also like to keep my folder structure for every project very neat. Otherwise, you will come back to it 6 months from now and you will forget what was happening there. And from here, let's export. And from here, I'm going to jump back into my DAZ Studio, go to Edit, then Figure, and Morph Loader Pro. And from here, I'm going to DAZ3D and our new object. Nothing changed, but actually we now have this new tab in here in our parameters, and we can adjust this morph. So if you feel like you went too far, which I think maybe I did, you don't have to go 100%. You can keep it like, let's say, 75. Cool. So our morph for the character is complete. So in order to pose the character, you just need to click on this button, the bone button, and drag and drop, well, just drag parts of the characters in a position you want. You also can lock certain parts. For example, I want to position feet close together, but you see how one feet keeps sliding? You can just hit spacebar, and now that feet is locked. You also can control parts of the character with this controller, either by controlling the sphere or controlling every part individually. You can select parts in this tree, and that will work too. In order to restore the pose, you can just click on the Restore Figure pose. In case you want to restore only certain part, like let's say you have I don't know, very complex pose of the hand and you want to restore it to what it was, you can just click on it, click on that name on in the tree, then select children, so everything is selected, and then click on Restore Selected Items. You also can pose things symmetrically, so let's say you have very particular pose of your arm or any other part. You can just go to Symmetry here. So now it's symmetrical. In order to control hands, you can click on the hand itself, then go into posing, right hand, and here you have controllers controlling entire palm. Also, I recommend creating some kind of expression on your character. You can find some head expressions in here. I have more than the standard one because I have some expression which I bought before, but they're part of the expressions which are standard, and you can experiment with them. Like, for example, angry and frown, surprise, and so on. Also, you can go to Window, Panels, and you can pick Power Pose, and then here click on Face, and if you notice, this one control my eyes. I can click into more detailed look and control every part separately. So there are lots of controllers. One of the awesome things you can do is to save your custom pose and then use it later. For example, I already selected and saved the pose I want to use. I saved it in here in Poses NAB 2022, and here's my pose. But let's say you did some other unique pose and you want to save it. For that, you just need to click into Genesis 8, poses. Here I created extra folder, and then you click plus and pose preset. It will ask you to name it, and then you will have it. So yeah, I'll come back to the pose. So before we export this model into Cinema4d, let's add some final features. Let's hide the timeline. I would like to add hair. I'm going to add standard hair, which goes with standard DAZ. I also bought a model of glasses. I'm going to add it here as soon as I'll find it. Sometimes when you can't find something, you can just start searching here and click enter. So here it is. And in order to export it into Cinema with the best quality possible, I'm going to add more subdivisions and more details. So I'm going to go into parameters, and in parameters I'm going to add subdivisions. Be careful, the very last level of subdivision is very heavy, so if you do not have a strong computer, better not even try. I'm going to do 3 and 4, I think it's fine for me. So I'm going to add some details by adding shapes from other characters. So I'm going to go to shaping and actor, people, and add this Victoria 8 HD details, which adds this nice sculpting. And I'm going to click into full body, find Victoria, and add 35% of that morph only into the body. You might not have those extra features. I bought them. It's totally fine to follow along without it, and it's also totally fine to bring this model into ZBrush and add your own details. So now our character is almost ready to be exported back into Cinema. We'll only need to add eyelashes and tears. So you can find it by clicking onto Genesis 8, Anatomy, and adding tears and eyelashes. So everything is here, and we can export it by clicking File, Export, .3D. I always prefer saving it as OBJ rather than FBX if I can, because all those nice morphs often not being exported correctly when it's exported as FBX. OBJ, on the other hand, saves all those nice details. So I saved this figure before. It's called figure 03 in my case. So you would just have to click save, and everything, standard. So next step, I would want to create an animation from a pose to this pose in order to bring it into Marvelous Designer, and there we can create clothing which would work for this pose. In order to create this animation, let's click on the timeline. Let's click on any part of the character and restore it to T-pose. To A pose. This is A pose, not T pose. And here let's click create key and then drag it to frame 30 and select the pose we saved earlier. Click create key again. As you can see, our character is now animated. In order to bring it to Marvelous Designer, let's save it as animation. So we need to save it, we need to export it, not save it, export it as FBX. OBJ does not have animation, as you know, so you can save it either as Collada or FBX. I already saved it earlier, and you click save. Sure, everything looks right. As you can see, I made a garment on standard A pose with our character, and let me show you how you can pose this garment with our new pose. So let's import FBX of that character. Import FBX animation, which we earlier created in DAZ. I have these two garments frozen, so I'm going to unfreeze it so it can follow along. And now I'm switching to animation mode and click play. And super cool, as you can see, character is moving and garment is moving with it. And as soon as our animation is complete, we can switch to simulation mode and continue refining our garment. Okay, let's take a look at our final scene. As you can see here, I already have everything set up. I brought the figure. I also added some extra elements like necklace, earrings, zippers, buttons, and let's go through every element piece by piece. So first of all, I'll start with disabling my camera. And I'm going to turn off the figure I already have. And I'm going to turn on clay render. And I'm going to turn on the figure which I brought and didn't set up yet. So we're going to be bringing materials. Let's take a look at the lighting setup, what's happening in there. So as you can see, I have 5 lights. The main coolness creates this dome light with HDRI. I got this HDRI from textures.com, and I added some extra something to it. Like as you can see, it just was a little too dim and I wanted it to be more colorful. So I adjusted exposure, hue, saturation, and tint. And then I brought a couple lights into the scene. As you can see, most of those lights and just rim lights, colorful rim lights. And I also have one extra light in here, which is reflection in the sunglasses, which I'll show how to set up a little later. So we have our lighting, we have our figure. Let's talk about textures. So one of the hardest things when you bring model from DAZ, your textures look like this, and it's a huge pain to set it up because you need to know what every material does. It just gets very complicated. That's where Udim's come to the rescue. If you look at your main figure and then go to BPUV edit mode, you actually can see that our figure has Udims. So we not often usually use them, but it's a really great way how to use many textures with only one material. So I'm going to jump back to my standard view and let's talk about where to find those textures in the DAZ library. So it gets very complex, but you can just jump into your DAZ, right click on any asset and say browse to file location. When you do that, you go into DAZ library. You need to jump back a little bit to the DAZ library and go to runtime. Runtime, that's where all the textures are stored. And you go to textures, DAZ, characters, and Genesis 8.1, male or female, depending on what you working with. And as you can see, we have all our textures in here. They're kind of a little bit separate, and you would need to go back and forth a little bit. But pretty much one thing you need to remember, you need to organize them before you start working. They're not named properly, so I actually had to rename my textures for it to work. So if you take a look at the textures I have here, I pretty much renamed them with the same name, where 101, 102, 103, 104, 105, 106 is correspondent with Udim's I have in here. So if you jump again into Udim's, you can see the face is 101, head is 1002, body is 1003, legs 1004, hand 1005, mouth 1006, and eyes 1007. And in here you can see I renamed every texture so it's correspondent. If you remember, in here the names were a little bit like mixed up and complex. I just named it G8, and I added B for my bump and SB for specular, or like some other maps names. So when you do that, sorry, it's extra work, but it's totally worth it, because every time you're going to bring DAZ character in the future, setting up materials will be so easy if you just do this a little bit extra work. Let's jump back into our UI. So as I said, you get this mess of the materials, and in order to make your life easier, you can just do duplicated materials, and then let's create Redshift material. And as you can see, all this stuff, those are actually fabrics. All this stuff, this is the materials for the character. I need to grab anything body related. So it would be head, toenails, sclera. Cornea is actually have to be just a transparent material. Fingernails, mouth, eye socket, body. So this is our body material. So let me create some redshift material for the clothing, so it would not be too distracting at the moment. And I'm going to hide my hair because that's a little different and a little bit more complicated setup. So let's see how it looks. Okay. So let's take a look at our body material. So for Udim to work, we need to bring texture, select one of the Udim textures. Let's connect it straight to your surface. And as you can see, like here and here and here, texture doesn't work. Texture works on the face, but everywhere else it's just drawn. So in order for Udim to work, you need to add Udim. And magic. Everything works great. All our textures are just correct. And now we can set up material. And now every time you're going to bring other DAZ character, you can just do the same operation where you just removing duplicated material and then put the same skin material as your main material. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to just apply my already earlier created skin material on my new material. And let's take a look what's happening there. So immediately, as you can see, a character turned black. It's because for some reason when you export stuff from DAZ, sometimes your normals are flipped, so you need to go to the normal tag and click swap normals. Cool. So this is all looking right. I'm going to hide my glasses for now, just so we can see eyes. Okay. Let's see what's happening with my skin material. Okay, I know it looks a little bit complex, but we will go through everything step by step. So, first of all, let's add one more dome light. Right now it's too dim to see what's happening. Okay, so let's take a look. We have our Udim texture, which we created earlier. We have our bump texture. And we have our S texture, which I'm using for my roughness. And then also I'm going to combine it with curvature to drive some SSS textures. As you can see here, I created RS skin material. I switched radius to 1, overall scale to 1, and I added bump, which is bump texture, going to bump shader node with 0.2 height, and also I have my S texture, enabling linear workflow, and remapping it a little bit, and that is my glossiness. I actually had to, if I remember it correctly, had to swap black and white because for some reason skin material is glossiness, not roughness, and as you might know, it's opposite. Like, you know, roughness is inverted glossiness, but don't worry about it. Just follow along. Okay, so the main thing about skin material, it has 3 layers of SSS scattering. We have shallow scatter, a mid scatter, and deep scatter. So I'm using the same texture material and pretty much feeding it into different color correction nodes depending on the depth of the layer. So this is my shallow layer. This is pretty much my skin material. This is like a super thin layer. It's complementary color to my deep layers. So this is my shallow layers, the very thin skin above everything. And here you can see the settings. This is my mid color settings. So this is kind of neutral. And then I have my deep color. I actually also multiplying it a little bit with extra color. So this is my very deep layer. This is like to represent that there is blood and all the other fun stuff. And so if we take a look one by one, so I'm going to remove the weight from here. This is my SSS, which is only deep scatter. This is the dark red color and is the full weight, and it's also the deepest. Then I have my shallow, then I have my mid scatter, my neutral color skin, and it's not as deep and not full weight. And then I have my crazy green color, which is actually, you can see when it's all combined together and with such a shallow radius, does not look crazy and actually creates this neutral skin tone. So let's take a look at this mask. This is actually a mask for my shallow layer. So everything which is black going to be see-through, and we will see more of a mid and deep scatter layers. So pretty much we will have more red and skin tone around nose area, lips, ears. The veins will be more red, and everything which is white going to be this more greenish cold color. So let's include it into our shallow weight layer and see how it looks. I'm going to save it into my picture viewer and let's compare. So this is how it was without that mask, and this is with the mask. As you can see, skin looks much more interesting. It has more red areas around nose and lips, and we get more of that greenish color in other areas. And again, the way I created this mask, it's pretty much the texture we used for glossiness remapped, so it's much more contrasty, so the veins are visible. And then I'm using curvature map, thanks to curvature map, we can include nose and lips and ears into our mask. And pretty much this is my layer color, where the main texture goes into base layer, and then layer 1 is the black color driven by our curvature mask, and they being combined into this. And yes, so in the result we get in this skin material, which I actually reuse quite a bit. I'm just bringing new characters from DAZ and applying this skin without diving too deep into setting. Let's take a look at other materials. So I'm going to remove my dome light and going to apply my jacket material. So if we will take a look at what's happening with jacket material, this is actually regular material with a texture map. With the normal map of leather, going through triplanar, going through bump, shader node on tangent space normal mode. I dialed it back to 0.5, and then I have this dirt map going through triplanar, and then I'm feeding it into change range, where this is pretty much my roughness, where all the minimums, which is black, going to be 0.4 roughness, and all the whites going to be 0.6 roughness. In the result, I'm going to take a look. Result, we have this leather texture with a little bit of roughness. And as you can see, like if I go dramatic in terms of the roughness numbers, this is just so you clearly can see what it does. So it just changes numbers and everything, which is 0. This is like this glossy part, and 1 is the roughness part. So I don't want it to be that extreme. So this is range from 0.4 to 0.6. Okay, that is my jacket, and let's take a look at the top material. I'm going to change my setting to 100. So Control F, I am framing my area view. The top material is very simple. I have this normal map texture with the cool ornaments, and fitting it into triplanar, into bump with the tangent space normal, and then this is the material itself. I'm adjusting metalness to 1, so this is actually metallic looking sort of jacket, and my color now drives my specular color because it's metalness, and it's pink, and the ornament comes from normal maps. And then we have our pants, which I kind of went with like this fun snake-like material. Same deal, very simple. It's a again, metal with blue specks, and the texture is coming from the bump map. In this case, it's just height filled because it's not normal map, it's regular black and white map. Okay, let's take a look at the glasses. I'm going to unhide my glasses and I'm going to apply my glasses material on it. Okay, this is the sunglasses. Material didn't apply because I needed to put it in the very end. I went with this yellow shaded glass. And one thing I really wanted it to do is to reflect my special area light. So I'm going to include my glasses into that light in here. And while I was setting up, I realized one thing which didn't work is, again, some normals were wrong. So I'm going to flip those normals. And as soon as I did, we see reflection coming through. Let's take a look at the settings of the material. Everything is super simple. It's just transmission refraction is 1 and it's yellow color. Okay. I feel like most of the materials are set. Now the biggest challenge is to set the hair, and there is a trick to it. So when we look at our hair, you can find the maps from DAZ folder, the same way I shown you with the DAZ character, and do it through opacity maps. As you can see, this is pretty much geometry with the opacity maps, but I found that it takes forever to render, for me at least. I usually, when I have to go with this kind of hair, I render in Arnold. It's much faster, but Redshift is very good with hair material and with just calculating splines as hair. So I try to convert this haircut into the splines, and let me show you how I did it. So I'm going to delete my previous character, the character which is we're trying to set up. I'm going to bring back my original character. So let's start step by step. I'm going to grab, for now I'm going to hide hair I created, and I'm going to unhide original hair from this character. What I need to do, I need to take this geometry and convert it into guides for my splines. In order to do that, I am going to select those middle edges and convert them into the spline. You can do it by clicking 2 times on your geometry in your edge mode, and then when you're satisfied with the number of guides, I do not recommend going too crazy, because we also need to adjust the direction, and it gets very tedious. But I think this is a good amount. I also recommend setting up your selection, so if you have to go back to it, you would not have to do it again. And now I have this hotkey here, but you can also just do Shift S and start start typing edge, called edge to spline. Click on edge to spline, and there is a spline appeared underneath our geometry. So I'm going to take it out and hide our original geometry. So now let's take a look at those splines. Right now, the directions are all over the place. So when you see spline being white, it means it starts from the center and ends in the end. So we need all our splines to be the same. So I'm selecting all the blue splines and right click it, point order, reverse sequence. Checking it in some other areas. Oh, this is a tricky one because it goes all the way through. So let's see what we can do here. So I just broke the spline and I'm going to reverse the order. And same here, just going to grab this and break segment and point, reverse sequence. And you see we have a couple more of the same problems, and point, reverse sequence. Okay, now I think all our splines have the right direction, and we can create our hair. So I'm going to go hair, add hair. So right away you can see that things are not looking right. It's because we need to set up our guides as spline guides. The count is 49 and the hair clones number is 300. And I want it to be the same in the root area and then stick out in random direction in the ends around 3 centimeters. I'm also going to substitute hair material I created earlier. Let's see the settings for this. So color and specular doesn't matter. Thickness is from 0.05 to 0.01. I added some length variation, some kink, clump, bend, curl. Feel free to experiment with that as much as you want. And let's see how it looks. So I really don't mind it, but one thing you want to see is light coming through hair, so you have nice rim light around the haircut, and that is done by using this material as a hair material, and immediately you'll see that we have that fun rim light. And in this material, I'm just adjusting the diffuse color, and the most important part is the backlight translucency, so it could catch that light, the rim light behind it. And I played a little bit with the specular and reflection settings. So yeah, I think all the materials are pretty much set. I only need to explain some of the camera parameters. So in my camera, I actually changed it from standard one, from classic to or from normal to portrait, and then I added redshift tag to it, enabled bokeh, and with this click to focus, I focused it on the eyes. I added aspect ratio, so our bokeh is a little bit, you know, oval shaped. And actually, I would like to add bokeh texture to it. You know what? I like it without it, so I'm going to actually kill it. I also added a little bit in camera bloom. I added a little bit of camera animation, and just watch out for the hair dynamics. You'll get this weird thing going on. And that's it. Okay, this is our final render. We are done. I hope you found this presentation helpful and can use some of those tips in your own workflow. Thank you for watching.